In a bit of a surprising development, the conservative Supreme Court has ruled that workers cannot be fired for being gay or transgender. So now this is a 6-3 decision authored by Justice Neil Gorsuch, of all people, right? So now he argued in this majority opinion that an individual's homosexuality or transgender status is not relevant to employment decisions. Well, of course, that makes sense. That's what we've been arguing all along. But now he realizes that. Now he says that's because it is impossible to discriminate against a person for being homosexual or transgender without discriminating against that individual based on sex. And we already had bans out there saying that you cannot discriminate when it comes to employment people based on their sex. And so this is basically an expansion of that. And so, laws that we currently have on the books that are now expanded towards people that are gay and LGBT. I mean, gay and trans, or all part of the LGBT community. So that's good. That's great. Fantastic. So now, a lot of you are like, oh my God, I can't believe Gorsuch would join with the liberals. Well, okay. Well, here's the thing about Gorsuch, right? So this isn't a surprise for me, right? Brett Kavanaugh is your more social conservative. Gorsuch is pro-corporate. Corporations don't give a damn if you're gay or trans. You know what they care about? Money. That's what that is. They care about making money. And to be honest, of course, the LGBT community has money. And they have more money, more backing, and more support than, the basic smattering of old bigots, essentially. And that's why the left, at least on some of these issues, has won the culture wars. Corporations look at LGBT customers and think, oh, well, their money's green. It spends. It spends just as much as straight money. Who cares? I don't care who you are or what you identify as. Money. All I care is about if you have money. If you don't have money, get the hell out of here. Fair enough. So that said, were there niche markets that, of course, play to angry bigots? Yes, there are. But again, they're niche. They're not in the mainstream anymore. Whereas LGBT rights are in the mainstream. And that's good. That's how society changes. That's how society progresses and evolves. And that's always a good thing, right? So now Gorsuch was joined by, of course, John Roberts, another conservative, and, of course, the liberal wing, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan. So, of course, yeah, you're going to have all the four liberals. Now, of course, the dissent were Sam Alito, Clarence Thomas, Brett Kavanaugh. Those guys are the old culture warriors. And so they're like, no, let's not expand those protections to people. How sad. I mean, how sad of a person do you have to be? I know. They'll use like, oh, no, we're constructionists and we shouldn't expand rights to anybody that isn't a wealthy white landowner male. Well, then Clarence Thomas himself wouldn't have any rights if we go back to the original constructionist. But okay, whatever, right? We know those guys are basically just. I mean, they're not even serious. I don't even take them seriously. They're a parody of themselves. But anyway, whatever. So now advocacy groups, of course, were really happy about this. The decision, this is according to Kristen Broud, a co-chair of the National Trans Bar Association, saying the decision sends an unambiguous message that equal protection under the law applies to all, and that an employee's failure to adhere to an employer's gender stereotype is not a license to discriminate. Sarah K. Ellis, president of and CEO of GLAAD, said the decision affirms what shouldn't have been even a debate. LGBTQ Americans should be able to work without fear of losing jobs because of who they are. Now, the weird thing is, I mean, when they bring up this shouldn't even be a discussion, you're right. A lot of Americans really didn't even know that this was an open question. They're like, wait a minute. Why should your employer make that decision? Like, Don't we already have protections for those people? Turns out, in at least half of the states, we didn't. And so, yes, we needed a federal protection, a federal ruling, and now we actually have one. And so that's a good thing, right? So now the cases were brought by three workers who said they were fired from their jobs because they were gay or transgender. They argued that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which says employers may not discriminate based on sex, also applies to sexual orientation and gender identity. And of course, that was a compelling argument, enough for even the conservatives on some of the conservatives on the court to be able to say, yeah, that does apply. Even if Gorsuch himself was like, I don't really like trans people or gay people, but man, when you base it on the sex and on the reading, I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense. Seems really, really obvious, but apparently not obvious again enough to the very socially conservative justices that we have. So especially Brett Kavanaugh. Yeah. Now Gorsuch also wrote, it doesn't matter if other factors besides the plaintiff's sex contributed to the decision, and it doesn't matter if the employee treated women as a group the same when compared to men as a group. If the employer intentionally relies in part on an individual employee's sex when deciding to discharge the employee, put differently, if changing the employee's sex would have yielded a different choice by the employer, a statutory violation has occurred. And that, of course, makes sense. Discrimination based on sex is discrimination, flat out, period. And obviously now, and it should have been for a long time, basing employment on sexual orientation or gender. It doesn't really matter. You as an employer have no right to get into somebody's personal life. If it's not related to the job, it shouldn't matter. And believe it or not, I think that, again, many people did not realize that this was a question, that this had happened, that happened all the time. And now, thanks to this ruling, it won't. So this is great. This is a great positive step forward for the LGBTQ plus community. And so this is something to celebrate. We now have equal employment protection. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.